We are delighted to be joined by the District 3 City Councilors this evening, Tiffany Koyama Lane, Angelita Morillo, and Steve Novick. And we're fortunate, thank you. And we're fortunate to have Sophie Peel as our moderator for this and each of our Meet the Counselor programs this year. Thank you. Sophie is a Willamette Week City Hall reporter. Our counselors now have 1 full year of experience in these new roles. And tonight, you will hear counselors reflect on the challenges and achievements of the past year and the opportunities they see going forward. Before we begin, a word about the City Club of Portland. Our mission is to educate and inform our members and the community about matters of public interest and to provide space for civic dialogue that encourages respectful discussion and positive change. We accomplish this through producing nonpartisan public forums like the one tonight, and debates, and conducting policy research that results in a written report that will have recommendations to policymakers. City Club members provide the ideas, lead the conversations, conduct the research, and plan the programs that address issues important to our community. Member dues and donations make it possible for City Club to offer programs like this free for the public. And everyone is welcome at City Club. You can learn more about events, membership, and research at our website, pdxcityclub.org. You can also use the QR code at the registration desk or on the card on your seat to join City Club today. And if you do that, you can take $40 off the annual membership dues by using the code NEW40, that's capital N, capital E, capital W 40. Also, we have a dues assistance program. So if you're interested in that, it's on an honor system, just let us know. We have a terrific lineup of programs scheduled for the next few months I'd like to tell you about. On Friday, this coming Friday, the 6th, City Club will feature Governor John Kitzhaber and the former director of the Oregon Health Authority, Dr. Bruce Goldberg, to discuss Oregon's healthcare crisis. A second program on healthcare will be on March 6th, and it will focus on the kinds of solutions that we might have to that crisis. And both these programs will take place at the University Place Hotel near Portland State University. Through February and March, we'll continue to host all the other City Councilor forums, and the venues for those will be in their districts. The series with District 4, which will be on Tuesday, February 17th at University Place, and District 2 councilors will be next on Wednesday, March 4th at the Alberta Rose Theater. And our series will wrap up on Tuesday, March 10th with District 1 councilors at the Urkos Salkheim Tosh Community Center. We want to offer special thanks to Robin Denberg, Dana Bach, and Bobby Reagan, the City Club Programming Committee members, and the producers of tonight's program, and to Kayla Kennett, City Club's Communications Director. We also want to thank St. Neri Church for hosting us this evening. Finally, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors who allow us to present programs like this free to the public. Our City Councilor Series sponsor is The Standard, and our sponsors for the season are AARP Oregon, Fight Against Sex Trafficking, Hospital Association of Oregon, Tonkon Torp, and the Don Sterling Fund of the Oregon Community Foundation. Let's show them our appreciation. Now, to tonight's program. With the 2024 adoption of the Portland City Charter changes, Portland moved away from its long-time form of government, using a new ranked choice voting system. You'll recall that, don't you? Portland voters elected 12 city councilors in November 2024, with 3 councilors elected to represent each of the 4 city districts. These city councilors were sworn into office in January 2025, a little over a year ago, And it might be useful to note that councilors in District 3, as well as the mostly West Side District 4, will be up for election this November for a full 4-year term using our ranked choice voting system. Tonight's program features city councilors from Portland's District 3, which covers most of southeast Portland, west of Interstate 205, and south of I-84. It also includes a small sliver of northeast Portland. District 3 includes popular attractions such as OMSI, Oaks Amusement Park, Powell Butte Nature Park, Mount Tabor Park, and the Rose City Golf Course, just to name a few. District 3 is the second wealthiest behind West Side's District 4. The district's median income is $84,000 annually. 11% of the residents in District 3 live below the poverty line. This district is less racially diverse than the city's overall population. According to the 2020 U.S. Census, 75% of district residents are white, 9% identify as Latino, 9% identify as Asian, and 4% identify as Black. Our current District 3 councilors, Ms. Koyama Lane, Ms. Murillo, and Mr. Novick, will tell you a little bit about themselves in the beginning of their remarks. We are excited to hear about their observations, hopes, dreams, plans for District 3 and for the city more broadly. Finally, our moderator tonight and for each of our programs will be Sophie Peel. In addition to being a skilled moderator, Sophie has been a Willamette Week City Hall reporter since 2021. She has covered state politics, including reporting in 2023 that led to the resignation of a former Oregon Secretary of State. She previously worked for NPR in Georgia. We want to thank those of you who submitted questions as you registered for the program. Sophie has incorporated many of those themes into her own questions. Tonight, at the end of our program, we will also have a short live audience question opportunity with questions limited to 30 seconds, and we'll hold you to that. Finally, I invite you to stay after the program for a few minutes if the counselors are available to meet with you, and also give you an opportunity to meet with some City Club members if you have questions. So now, welcome District 3 counselors, and Sophie, the floor is yours.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay, even in the back? Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here. This is such a great turnout. I was not expecting this. I want to start by asking each of you to just take 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourselves. And I know last year when we did sort of a very similar forum, I asked each of you to introduce yourselves a little bit more about your background. This year, I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about your first year in office and what you've accomplished and sort of what your North Star has been this year. Councilor Koyama Lane, let's start with you.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. First of all, it just feels so great to be in this room. I feel so honored to be here with all of you, and you can be doing a lot of different things on your Wednesday evening, and I appreciate that you're here. I am Councilor Koyama Lane or Teacher Tiffany. Either one is fine. You know, many of you know that I taught in public schools for 16 years. I'm still a teacher, and I can still get my job back at PPS. So people say, she used to be a teacher. I'm like, no, I still am. I knew when I was running that my work as a teacher and my background as an organizer, that it was going to be transferable to City Hall, but I didn't quite realize exactly how much, or there are ways that those skills have come into play that I couldn't have even imagined. Politics, I have learned, is really relational work, and governance and getting things passed and getting people to work together really includes a lot of bridge building and spending time getting to know people. That's with it between counselors, but that's also with community. I would say a North Star for me has been to try to really listen to the communities that are closest to the issue. So when we're talking about traffic safety, to really bring in the people that have been doing that work for decades. When we're talking about immigrant rights and asylum seekers, to talk to the folks that have been doing that work for many, many years. Yeah, so I'm proud of both the work that has been on the dais, but a lot of the also behind the scenes work of bringing people along and getting to know people and building relationships.
Thank you. Councilor Murillo.
Testing. Okay, good. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. My name is Angelita Morillo, or Angelita, for those of you that speak English. I have really appreciated being on City Council and getting to represent District 3 this year. I think that this is an incredibly challenging time for anyone to be in elected office, but I also think that because of that, it's an incredibly rewarding time. I know that we're not supposed to talk too much about our background and introducing ourselves, but I am a Paraguayan immigrant. My family moved to the United States when I was 4. And I think that for a lot of us up here and for many folks on council, there is a different type of person that is in leadership with a different type of experience. And you see that reflected in how we have navigated these spaces, who we include in this moment, who we consult with, and the questions that we ask about the policies that are being created and passed. So I have a very energetic and excited team. I have really focused on, as far as a North Star, what would I want my elected official to be doing in this moment when we are facing attacks from the federal government, when the city of Portland is facing an immense budget crisis, when there are local and federal issues that are all impacting us downstream? And for me, I want an elected official that is going to be there to fight for me. I want an elected official that is going to meet the urgency of the moment. And I want someone who is going to be efficient and pass policies to address the needs of the community. So my office and me and my team have been very prolific in passing policies that address the issues that were brought to us from the community. I passed the algorithmic price fixing ban to stop algorithmic price fixing in the city of Portland that would increase rental costs. And I remember being at City Club last year and bringing that up then, and now we've actually done it. I worked on the detention facility impact fee to make sure that when ICE is tear gassing our communities, that they are going to actually have to pay for the harms that they are doing to us. I worked with Councilor Green, and we just passed a resolution this afternoon to investigate why the hell $20 million just was suddenly found in the Housing Bureau, and why we found another $20 million when we're being told there's a budget deficit. I think that a lot of what I'm looking into is accountability and good governance, not just with our dollars, but also with every tool that we have to address the attacks that are happening at the federal level. I've also really enjoyed getting to work with my colleagues on the various committees that we get to sit on. I get to co-chair the Climate Committee with Councilor Novick, and we're digging into some of the biggest issues that are facing our city, like the CEI hub, the fact that we are not prepared if an earthquake makes the Zenith oil train spill a bunch of oil into the Willamette River, making sure that we are holding these large corporations accountable for the harms that they are doing in our community to make sure that regular people are getting the benefits of living in Portland. To me, as someone who was raised by a single mother who struggled to, be in this city, but who grew up during a much more affordable time, I have seen that shift. And my mother could have never raised 2 daughters as a single parent in the city of Portland today like she did back then. And my hope is that we will create a city that is affordable and welcoming for everybody, so that we could have a family like that come and live in our city, and that it wouldn't be a burden. And I look forward to pursuing that in the years to come, and in whatever form that happens. And I'm very grateful to be here alongside my colleagues today. So thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you. Councilor Novick.
Is this on? Okay. So first of all, I just want to, since I served under the old form of government, I want to give one example of the difference between the two. It used to be, back in 2015, I was one of 4 councilors along with 1 mayor. Now there's 12 of us. And I think I saw an example of the impact of that when I went to a No Kings rally, and a guy came up to me and said, "Did you used to be on the city council, like back in the dawn of time?" And I was like, yeah, that's about right. He had no idea I was in the council now. And I saw no reason to tell him. In terms of I'm going to talk about a couple of very specific things. One of my North Stars is, I think that we in Portland need to do a better job of identifying things that other cities do better than us and following them. And one example of that is that I did some work on this year is a friend of mine who's very into gun policy pointed out to me a year and a half ago that Portland lags the rest of the state and many places of the nation in using the red flag law to take guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves and others. And I mean, Bend uses it a lot because there's one police officer that latched onto that and made sure that Bend police knew about this tool. Connecticut, where hardly anybody owns guns, is used the red flag law to take away pretty much everybody's guns. That's a slight exaggeration. But in Portland, we were hardly using it all. And it turns out that when it was passed, I think it was in 2017, there just wasn't really an effort to educate Portland police officers or the broader community about that. We have some very good people in the police bureau and the behavioral health unit that are familiar with it, but there just hasn't been training for the rest of the force. So I brought out folks from every town for against gun violence, and this guy from Bend, and we had a hearing in the Public Safety Committee, and we also had another discussion in the Local Public Safety Coordinating Committee, which involves the county. And as a result of that, the police bureau has said, yes, we now recognize that this is an important tool we've been underutilizing, and we're going to commit ourselves to doing more training on that. And I think that that will save lives. Another North Star of mine is to make decisions based on good information and to constantly be exploring whether our assumptions are correct. One assumption that I've had, and I said this 10 years ago, is that I always thought that the police bureau is spending way too much of its time on things that aren't really crimes. And people other than police should be responding to things that aren't really crimes. So we had a session of the Public Safety Committee where we asked the police to come forward and say, okay, list the top 20 call types that you take and how much time you take on each. And that was really eye-opening. They were able to do it. And it turned out, rather to my surprise, that the vast majority of the calls they spend time on really are calls either about crime or about something that the person making the call thinks is a crime, even if it isn't. However, about 6% of the police time is responding to, quote, welfare checks, where basically somebody calls up and says, hey, there's a guy here who doesn't seem to be doing well. Was it a medical emergency? Well, not really. And then they wind up sending the cops. And to me, that's not something that the cops should be spending their time on. It might be 6%, but 6% of the police bureau's budget is a lot. So I introduced a budget note asking the police bureau to come back and say, what progress are they making shifting these welfare checks to folks other than police? Those are just a couple of really specific examples.
Thank you. Very briefly, emphasis on brief, can you each provide a highlight from this first year and then a low light from this first year? I think that was a hair reference, but I didn't mean it to be like that. I think highlights and lowlights are like a hairdresser term. Whoever thinks of theirs first, please go for it. I mean, I can provide mine, but I don't think anyone cares. So.
For me, some of the highlights have been when we have been able to pass things unanimously. And while media, not you necessarily, Sophie.
Probably me.
Maybe like it's a little more exciting for when there seems to be disagreements or we're not agreeing. There have been quite a few things that we've been able to unanimously pass, like the Protect Portlanders initiative and codifying our sanctuary status, both things that I got to co-sponsor. We unanimously recommitted to Vision Zero, so working towards having zero traffic fatalities and injuries. That was all 12 of us. We all supported trying to work on economic development by waiving the SDCs. I don't think it was quite unanimous, but there's a lot of us who are also on board with this next thing, strategic planning. I think maybe a couple people weren't into it, but the majority is. And so I think for me, the moments when we've been able to come together, and I think my low light is also connected to that. I do actually truly believe that most Portlanders want the same thing. They want safe, clean streets. They want thriving neighborhoods. They want people to be able to have dignified lives. But I do sometimes feel like the low light for me is we get really caught up in arguing over the how, when I do think the what is very similar for a lot of us. So I do hope as we move into some strategic planning as a full council that we can get specific on some places where we do agree, and maybe draw some Venn diagrams and even be surprised at places where we agree with some of our colleagues who we normally don't tend to. Was that brief enough?
Nope, but you'll have another opportunity later.
I'm ready to go, and I will keep it brief, ma'am. I think a highlight for me was in the first weeks of City Council, the new form of government. Councilor Green and I and a few others passed a resolution to hold the Zenith Oil train accountable to the public, and that was really cool. But the part that to me was really special was that we had community members who had worked on this issue for decades, who came into City Hall. They filled council chambers. There was a dialogue back and forth with the council and the public in a way that you would have never seen before under the prior form of government. And to begin that new form of government in such a way that the public is invited, that there is a dialogue, that people are being heard, showed me that this is a new form of government. Things are going to be different than they were before. And as someone who worked under the old structure, this has just been so much more inclusive and engaged than it ever has been. And I'm really grateful for that. So that was really a high for me. As far as the lows go, I think, to be honest, this past weekend, I was not down there this weekend when ICE tear gassed that entire group of people who, without any dispersal orders, but I watched the videos and the live streams, and seeing little children having to deal with the impacts of tear gas, to me, was incredibly heartbreaking and made me feel extremely angry that is being allowed in our community. So to me, that was a low point. And I think also this week we found out too that when Border Patrol shot those 2 Venezuelan immigrants, that DHS had smeared their names and said that they were tied to gangs. And then it turned out that the woman had actually been assaulted by those gang members. She was completely not tied to the gang, right? So seeing how far our federal government has gone to smear immigrants and to encroach on our rights locally, that has been a low for me. But I also have seen the community come together and rise to the occasion in a way that I would expect nothing less of Portlanders.
Councilor Novick.
I'm going to refuse to give a low light and accentuate the positive and give it 2 little highlights. One is we unanimously passed the mayor's proposal to suspend systems development charges for 3 years. Systems development charges are fees that are essentially a tax on new housing that's used for important things like building new parks. But the argument that we bought is that since housing production is a huge priority for the city, we should take some time and reduce the cost of producing housing and hope that that will lead to, putting some more housing out there. And I've always thought that the SDC idea should be rethought anyway. So I thought that was very impressive that we came together to do something to address one of our most critical problems. Another thing that I just wanted to mention, I think might have been the first policy we passed, was Councilor Jamie Dunphy, now President Dunphy, came to us with a policy saying, the city noise code there has 2 aspects. One is, the noise control officer can go out with like a decibel reader and say you're violating the noise code because things are too loud. But also the police could pretty much arbitrarily say we think you're too loud and shut you down. And according to Councilor Dunphy, that's been responsible for the closure of particularly many Black-owned music venues for decades. So we changed the noise code to make sure that it always, enforcement of the noise code has to follow objective standards. And that might seem like a small thing, but it was something that nobody dealt with in years and years, and I was really pleased that Councilor Dunphy brought that forward.
Thank you. I still think the funniest thing that has happened this year is how unhappy Council President Dunphy was when he realized that he was going to be Council President. I have never seen someone more sad. I'm just going to ask maybe 1 or 2 of you to respond to this next question so we can move along a little bit. But we're now 1 year into this new form of government, and I'm curious from where you sit, but also thinking from, kind of a variety of different angles. So from maybe a city employee's perspective, from a city councilor's perspective, and also from a City of Portland resident's perspective, has this new form of government in its first year been effective, do you think? Councilor Novick.
I was in the old form, and the old form was a disaster. I mean, when you give commissioners bureaus, 2 things happen. Those bureaus become all important to them, and they cease to feel any sense of responsibility for the others. So in the long term, this is going to be a better form of government. It's quite naturally been messy the past year. One way in which it's been messy that I talked to the new city administrator about working on is we've had some instances where the council have like bulled ahead, passing things probably without adequately consulting with city staff. But we also have had city staff feeling like they're not allowed to communicate directly with us because some of their managers are paranoid about that. Those two things obviously feed on each other. So I told the new city administrator, I think one of his top jobs has to be figuring out protocols where city staff feel comfortable talking to us about the issues where we're experts and gently reminding us that we should be talking about them before going off half-cocked.
Thank you for that. I'll leave this question to Councilor Koyama and Councilor Morillo. And I asked all three of you this question when we were here same time last year. Well, different venue, same time. What is a unique challenge that District 3 faces? And I think, Councilor Koyama, you said transportation issues. Councilor Morillo, I don't remember what you said, but I'm curious what you think that is now and if it's changed from what you said a year ago.
It's funny because before you even referenced our old answers, I was going to say transportation. And I think Councilor Koyama is nodding aggressively because she agrees. Because District 3, we have some of our most beautiful parks and pedestrian areas. And at the same time, we have pretty high traffic fatalities on multiple corridors. You have 82nd Avenue, Cesar Chavez Boulevard, lots of other Sandy Boulevard. I think actually last year when we all went to the Roseway Neighborhood Association, on our way there, we were a little bit late because there was a pedestrian who was run over by a vehicle. So I think that is a key focus for us. And it's very difficult during a time when the Bureau of Transportation is struggling with funding so much. But I think that we are going to have to find creative ways to address how we harden our safety barriers in the street to protect pedestrians and bicyclists, because if we don't do that, the alternative is that we lose our community members and we continue to fund car infrastructure without making sure that people feel safe to find other alternatives. So I think that's one of the top issues in District 3. And Councilor Koyama has done a great job championing this issue and keeping it at the forefront for all of us on council.
Yeah, I would still bring up transportation, safe routes to school, work, everywhere, wherever you're going around the district. Councilor Novick and I are both part of, I think I can share this, we're part of the mediation because the city's getting sued from this group, Bike Loud. Can't talk about the mediation. But we were in that, and I was thinking about how District 3 really, it does come up a lot, and a lot of cyclists talk about it because so many people go through District 3 to get to the other districts. So I think it is something that is huge in D3. Obviously, there are other things too, but that is something that is definitely at the forefront. I know, I think right after I got into office, a parent at Sunnyside School, where I taught for the last 7 years of my career, was hit by a car just after she dropped her kid off at school. And there are more and more stories. This is going to be something that is kind of systemic, so it's changing systems, and it's going to take a long time, but it's absolutely worth it.
Let's stay on transportation for a bit. So, there was a repaving project that was supposed to happen along Division from 40th to 50th that sort of unexplainably got delayed by a year, as many PBOT projects do. People don't really check on them, but they often get delayed 1 or 2 years. It's never totally clear why. It took a bicyclist getting killed this year, Mike Sloan, for the Bureau to actually start to pay attention to that project again and nudge it forward. So I'm curious, as councilors, what sort of power influence do you wield in terms of pushing specific transportation projects that have maybe been put on the back burner or, were supposed to happen a year ago and that got canceled? Like what do you have levers, or is it just sort of soft pressure that you can put on the administration?
Our levers are just the same as they were in the old form of government, which I think is being annoying on behalf of our constituents. I think I have the ultimate faith in Millicent, the director of the Portland Bureau of Transportation. I think she's an incredibly thoughtful leader who has really been looking at the big picture of what we do with such limited funds. And, you know, now we have deputy city administrators that handle these service areas as well. But the reality is that that bureau is struggling to balance the complete lack of funding that they have with so many critical priorities. So I think sometimes what happens, though, is the community will need something. They'll push for it. The bureau is overwhelmed with all of the priorities they have to balance. And then they'll come to us and or constituents will come to us and tell us, hey, this is a thing that this is deeply something that we care about. We've organized the whole neighborhood to do it. And then that's our cue as counselors to go, hey, Director Williams, we're getting 100 emails a week on this thing. We need to get a move on. And I have found that they've been incredibly receptive when that happens. So I think that our job sometimes is to triage those reactions that we see from the community as the people who are in community regularly and make sure that we are bringing that feedback back to the bureaus, since we do get to be in district more often than ever before.
So one more transportation question. As you noted, the Portland Bureau of Transportation is definitely looking at another pretty steep budget deficit this year, largely because of declining gas taxes and also declining parking fee revenues and parking ticket revenues. Time and time again, probably over the past 5 years, probably longer, PBOT has come to the council and said, here are our options. Either we cut services massively or we make more money somehow. None of them are good options. And I'm curious if there are one or two options sort of from the suite that you've been given that you are most keen on. Councilor Novick.
So this might not be a direct answer to that question, but I want to focus on a particular PBOT-related statistic. I asked PBOT several months ago, how much more money would we need to simply keep the streets of citywide concern, as they're called, the major streets, arterials and collectors, and some particularly critical local streets, how much would it take to keep them in their current mediocre condition? And their answer was $45 to $50 million a year. And I know that the mayor and Councilor Clark, as chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, are looking at various revenue-raising options. And what I said to them is, if you're looking at a revenue-raising option, try to raise at least $45 to $50 million a year. Because otherwise we're saying that not only our local streets, but our major streets are going to continue to deteriorate. And that's unacceptable. So that's what I'm in favor. I'm in favor of focusing on our key streets and ensuring that at a minimum we don't allow them to continue to deteriorate, and any option that meets that.
Thank you. Councilor Morillo, I'm hoping you can respond to that question as well about what kind of options you are most keen on.
Yeah, I think I'm vice chair of the Transportation Committee, and a few weeks ago we got a package from the Portland Bureau of Transportation of different options that we have for revenue raising in light of our terrible budgetary time. And some of those included street fees to do maintenance on different key roads. It's hard to consider any of these options because I think people are already struggling so much that we don't want to ask the public to give more. But I think that realistically, we are getting to a point where we're going to need to do some street fees to do repairs in certain areas. I will also say there are ways to get more creative than that. I have had the pleasure of speaking with a group called DPAVE. Raise your hand if you've heard of DPAVE? Okay, I heard some claps and lots of hands. See, I love District 3. Everybody knows stuff. Well, DPAVE has really been focused on, okay, if we cannot maintain all of these streets in the years to come because we're not getting federal dollars or whatever, then how do we creatively stop maintaining cement in order to transform these public spaces into pedestrian-friendly spaces, community gathering spaces, and I think that this doesn't all have to be a bad, sad thing. We can maybe close some streets, remove the cement, and make it a community gathering space. So I think that we're going to have to look at creative solutions like that unless we start taxing billionaires somehow, but the city of Portland can't do that.
So I want to go back. I kind of want to harken back to something you had brought up, Councilor Koyama Lane, about the city administrator and sort of their role. And as many people know, we have a new city administrator who started about a month ago, Raymond Lee. He came in, I think, into maybe the most difficult position in the city. It's a position that there's been a lot of controversy around it, just because he's sort of a bit of a broker between the city council and the mayor and also the administration, but no one really agrees about where exactly he should be in that kind of Venn diagram. And I am curious if you guys feel like the relationship between the executive, the administration, and the council has gotten better over the last year, if it has sort of stayed stagnant, or if it has gotten worse.
So the relationship between council, city administrator, and mayor?
All of it.
All of it. Well, if I can focus on our new city administrator, Raymond Lee, who just has been in the job for about a month, I feel like that has been a good shift. I think Mike Jordan, our former city administrator, brought a lot of expertise and knowledge, and I actually felt like he mentored me in a lot of ways, and I could ask him questions and he would be really honest, and he had a real perspective because he's just been in public service for so long. Raymond Lee has really come in ready to go, has been in the city administrator role, done this work, and I think he already is positioning, I'm cautiously optimistic, but is positioning himself in a way where he does report to the mayor, but he also does have to remain neutral around policy and legislation, because if council needs the executive branch to help with legislation and policy, he needs to be able to follow that lead also and be able to kind of have a wall with the mayor's priorities. So I feel like it is getting better. I think a year ago, I was a little bit thinking more like it's gonna look a certain way and we're all gonna like maybe be able to build bridges and feel good. And that's not, like, I don't know if I've totally given up on that, but I think that I just have a little bit more of a tolerance for, it's like some of this friction is okay. I think it's kind of necessary, and especially if we're all bringing forth what our constituents are wanting us to prioritize and fight for, that there is going to be some of that. So I think overall, I think it is better, like professionally, like we are functioning more.
I think there's a lot of people that probably think that the city administrator is actually the most important and powerful figure in the city. And I'm curious if you guys, one, agree with that, and two, think that's how it should be. Anyone can take that question.
I think that the role is incredibly important, and I think that it's a tough position, and it must be a lonely position, because you have to be independent from the executive and from council, and you have to be that person that draws the line and says, okay, council, you're trying to do this budget thing and it's absolutely bonkers and it's going to lead to something terrible. I think that was one of your metrics when you interviewed him, is like, can you hold the line if we're going rogue or whatever? But I also think that from my brief conversations with him as I'm getting to know him, we've only had him for about a month, is that he is prepared to draw those hard lines when necessary. And also, I think he's going to run a tight ship. I asked him when we heard about the first missing $20 million, I was like, Raymond, you've worked in other cities. Is this normal? Have you ever seen anything like this? Because everyone's been patting me on the head, telling me, oh, it's kind of weird, but don't worry about it too much. And I was like, this seems crazy. And Raymond said, I have never seen anything like this, and I think we need to absolutely figure out where those dollars are. This is unacceptable. And I think just having that perspective from someone who isn't from the city of Portland, who isn't impugned with Portland polite, who's going to be able to dig into those issues, is really critical. So it is a powerful position. It's an important position for someone who can draw the line. And I think that council and the executive, everyone's learning their powers under the charter, right? The mayor is learning, yes, I have my project about ending homelessness, and it's also my job to execute the will of council. When council passes a policy, we're going to be bugging him to make sure it's implemented. We are learning about our oversight powers as a legislative body. So I think that people are all learning what their roles are, and we are exercising our muscles in a way that's necessary.
I'm just going to ask one question about inter-city council dynamics. You know, sometimes it's been a really contentious year between some of you guys. And I think a lot of people, and I know councilors have sort of bristled against this characterization, but I think a lot of Portlanders see it this way, maybe because of how media has written about it. I don't think that has any small part in it. But there have kind of developed two factions on council over, you know, some certain contentious issues like policing. There's kind of the more moderate faction, and then there's the more progressive faction, affectionately called Peacock, which I love. I'm curious if you think there are ways those walls can be broken down, and also, does it matter if those walls are broken down, or is this good that we sort of sometimes have a 6-6 split?
I'll answer the most honestly. I genuinely have a very easy time finding something to like about every single person on council. It is not hard for me. I think my colleagues are very charming. I think they're funny. I think they're smart. I think they're deeply passionate people that love and care for this city. And I also think we have different experiences and different connections to different community members that inform the decisions and the policies that we're going to bring forward. And politics, as someone who has been at the mercy of powerful people, I view politics with relationship to power. And people don't like that because it's not a cute story about like all of us getting along. But the reality is that whoever can organize their community to push a policy forward is going to get the thing. And at the end of the day, we have been able to work across whatever the political line is for more progressive people and more conservative folks on council with regards to Portland standards, because you always need at least 7 votes to pass a policy. So at the end of the day, I would say I'm one of the most progressive people on council. I've also passed probably the most ordinances of any other councilor, and I've had to do that by always peeling off at least 1 vote from the more conservative side, which means that when we are passing policy and we are negotiating, that we are able to do that when necessary. So I think that you can't take things personally. You have to do the work of the people that the people put you there to do. And frankly, I think it requires a lot of tenacity and muscle to get through the bureaucracy, even when you are in the bureaucracy trying to pass policy. There is a reason this council has been less productive than prior councils as far as passing policies, and it's because it's really hard to push through that bureaucracy. So I think we can be kind and we can be loving, and we were elected to get some shit done. And sometimes that requires muscling through things.
Okay, for this next question, I require 1-word responses only. 10 being best, 1 being worst. How would you grade yourself in this first year? No explanation allowed. We have other things to get to.
This is like effort or like overall?
Overall.
Ourselves or ourself? Is this for each of us individually?
Each of you individually.
Go ahead, Novick, you start.
7.7.
Around 6.
I was going to say 7.5.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, same thing. I require 1-word answers. How would you grade the council as a whole in their performance this first year? 1 best, 10 worst. No, just kidding. Same scale.
5.5.
8.
I am? Okay. I'll go with Tiffany. 5.5 sounds about right.
Okay, wildly different. So we are approaching yet another really tough budget year, even though, as many of you noted, that extra $40 million magically found in the Housing Bureau will probably help a little bit. But we are facing probably tough cuts this year, and I'm curious where each of you are looking as far as where you might want to cut from the budget.
Do you want to go or should I?
There aren't many good places to look. I mean, the general fund goes overwhelmingly to police, fire, and parks. So, and there aren't fun places to cut any of those. So I'm just going to tell you like some of the decisions we're going to have to be looking at. And then I think we should sort of ask each of the bureaus for various ugly scenarios. If you're going to cut fire, that mostly means that you're going to cut fire stations, either completely or during parts of the day. And there are stations that don't get very many calls. But so if you're producing widgets, there's stations that you say, well, hey, that's not productive enough. But if you say you're going to cut that station, then even if there are not many calls, you're basically saying to that neighborhood, if your house catches fire, it's going to burn to the ground. So that's hard. As far as parks are concerned, we just asked the voters to vote for a significant tax increase, and turning around and saying, but now we're going to cut parks is going to be hard. So that's not very much fun. And some of the questions I'm going to be asking the Parks Bureau is, all right, if we were going to close down the facilities that are falling apart and probably have to be closed down in 5 years anyway, what does that look like? If we're going to stop paying for parks in the richer areas of town where maybe the rich people will band together and save them, what does that look like? And then for the police, you sort of ask them, you know, what does cutting patrol looks like? What do cutting individual units look like? Something that I could kind of live with cutting is something that's actually very small, which is the police spend some of their time arresting drug dealers to break up open air drug markets. They also spend part of their time cooperating with the federal government, trying to break up, arrest high-level drug dealers to break up the supply. I think that's a losing battle. We're not going to break up the cartels. So that's something I'd look to cut. But I think there's a grand total of 6 people that work in that unit. So that doesn't save very much money. So it is going to be extremely ugly.
Councilor Morillo.
Yeah, I mean, agree with everything that Councilor Novick outlined as far as the difficulties and what we are going to cut. I will say part of the reason I pushed so hard today for that resolution for us to dig into those missing dollars, though, is because there's clearly a mismanagement of our funding happening. If we are you should not be finding $40 million under the couch cushions. That's absolutely bananas to me. And that has kind of shaken me to my core. I'm not trying to avoid your question, but how can I appropriately, as a legislator, make decisions about our budget if I don't even know how many dollars we actually have? I don't have an accurate count right now. So I think that's a big question that I'm facing in the months to come. During the last budget cycle, we did community listening sessions, and we got feedback from the community about what things they wanted us to save and what things they wanted us to cut. And we're going to do that again in the districts, in our constituent coffees. And so I feel very much that I'm going to need to be hearing from the public about not just what you want to save, but what you are willing to cut. Because as Councilor Novick outlined, the general fund, which is the one that we're struggling with, handles fire, police, parks, roads, that sort of thing. And we need to hear what people want so that we can make those decisions and be led by you and not the other way around. I would say from a personal standpoint, something that I am grappling with is that we keep seeing federal agents attacking Portlanders, and we keep being told that the police can do nothing against them because they're federal agents, even when those federal agents are breaking the law. So a question I have is, why would we continuously fund a bureau that is only going to attack Portland residents when they are protesting, but never hold the federal agents accountable when they are physically assaulting our constituents? And there's no easy answer because, as Councilor Novick outlined, every single bureau is stripped to the core. There is no fat to trim. But those are some of the things that are kind of percolating in my brain over the next few months. And I really hope that you all show out at the different community listening sessions and testify on the things that you want to save and the things that you want to cut so that we can take your lead.
Councilor Koyama.
Yeah, this is a question that no one wants to answer, none of us. And actually, a lot of constituents don't want to answer this too. So ahead of the last budget cycle, even though I wasn't campaigning, but I was in office before the budget, I knocked a few hundred doors just around the district. And I said, hey, do you know that we're having budget listening sessions? And here's how you sign up. And also, here's the general fund. And here are the big 3 areas where our money goes: parks, fire, and police. Which ones would you cut? And do you want to? And people really struggled, but I also let them order. But I do think that's extremely important. And so I agree with Councilor Morillo. I am really going to be looking to constituents, and I think that's something, because those are the 3 areas for the general fund, right? Because most of PBOT is tied up in. Do you guys want to tell us? Who would cut fire if you had to pick one? Parks?
The participation for this survey is low.
Police? Okay. And then one thing that one of my colleagues brought up at one of our meetings today, that because honestly, I was in a Lyft, and the Lyft driver was like, what's going on at City Hall? You guys keep finding money in the couch cushions. And it does feel like embarrassing to keep seeing those articles and getting this information. Something one of my colleagues said that is sticking with me is that we are in this new form of government. Now all the bureaus, and they do have one boss. It is the city administrator. And so we might expect that there is some more of this. I hope it always means that we find money and not that we're finding debt. But that did kind of reframe it for me a little bit, that in this kind of growing pains time, as we're de-siloing, that this is maybe more normal than I thought.
So I think everyone can agree our world feels a little dystopic right now. The feds are in Portland. ICE agents are in Portland. Custom and Border Patrol agents are in Portland. They're arresting Portlanders. They're tear gassing us. What levers does City Council have as far as for controlling for those things? And maybe it's nothing legislatively. I don't know. Councilor Morillo, I know you've done, you guys have passed actually a couple things that can do small things sort of around the edges, not that they're not meaningful at all, but we can't just like send them away as much as we want to. Are there any big ticket items we could do that could really control for this?
I think yes and no. I've been trying to do a lot of public education around what the different levers of power different elected officials at different levels have, because I think this is something, it's hard for the community to make demands if you don't know what your DA can do, for example, right? So I think at the City of Portland, my team, part of the reason we created the detention facility impact fee, for example, is that we have tried holding the federal government accountable for the harms that they did, like when they put the gate around the Justice Center in the middle of the road in the bike lane, right? We tried to say, hey, federal government, if you don't remove this, we're going to fine you. Well, guess what? The federal government can ignore you. They don't have to pay any fines. But you know who does have to pay a fine? A landlord that is allowing a tenant to tear gas a neighborhood. They have to pay that fine. And so I think that we have to find really creative workarounds with the policies that we have. And I think fees are some of those things. I think land use zoning, those are things we're going to have to look into. Raise your hand if you've heard about the McAdam ICE permit discussion. Okay. A few folks, but not everybody. Just very briefly, there are folks in the community that are calling on City Council to revoke the McAdam ICE permit for the building that's downtown where the majority of protests are happening. City Council cannot magically revoke the permit because it was granted legally to people by the prior City Council, I think back in 2011. So now there have been complaints filed about the permit, and people have been saying, well, they are violating the land use permit because they are tear gassing the neighborhood. They are causing harm. Those complaints have now gone under investigation under the permitting department and the mayor's office. And once that investigation is done, those facts and evidence would come back to City Council for discussion and a vote. And your City Council is going to act as a judicial body where we have to review the evidence from an impartial standpoint and then make a legal decision about whether or not to revoke the permit. That being said, it's also very tricky because, frankly, what we're going to see is the landlord or the federal government is going to appeal. Say we did choose to revoke the permit based on the evidence. They are going to appeal that decision to DEQ, and then it goes back to the feds to be litigated. So that's going to be a 2-year or more process. There are no quick and easy solutions. However, we also have a police department that is being stationed in front of the McAdam Ice Building, and they are addressing protesters. I would like to see our police do more. Can they be doing some evidence gathering while they're standing there? Could they be gathering tear gas canisters so we can figure out what type of tear gas and munitions they're using against our protesters, so that we can look into the permit, right? What are things that they can be doing to film and gather evidence of federal abuses so that the city has more evidence in our case? I don't think that employees who are going down there should just be standing there or only addressing Portlanders. They need to be addressing what the federal government is doing as well without interfering, because obviously it is very complicated for a local police officer to interfere with a federal officer. I will also say that I really hope that the executive branch is going to coordinate with the district attorney. Do you know raise your hand if you know who your district attorney is. Okay, good. His name is Nathan Vasquez. And that's an important name for you to know, because when a district attorney is going to pursue cases against ICE agents or people who are violating the law at the federal level, the president actually can't use a presidential pardon to overturn that. Your district attorney has a very powerful role in investigating these things. And in his public statement, he said, I'm waiting for the city or the police to refer cases to me. We're not an investigative body. Well, I expect that the district attorney is going to be proactive and is going to coordinate with these agencies in order to educate on what types of evidence and cases he needs to look at to start prosecuting these cases. So I'm giving you a long answer. But I guess what the point is that there are actually creative things that local governments and elected officials can do. We should not be sitting in this learned helplessness position, and we need to be coordinating locally and with our congressional leaders, with everybody, to throw sand in the gears. And I expect everybody is just going to be on it, because we don't really have a choice.
We just have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try to get through a couple more questions. Another hot topic, homelessness. Mayor Keith Wilson is sure to be asking the council for another 40 some million to fund his 1,500 shelter beds, so it's very still unclear to me whether actually 1,500 are open or available. But he's likely going to ask for continued funding for that, and he sort of cobbled together a bunch of different funding sources last time, mostly from external sources. It's unclear if he'll get that again. I'm curious if he brings a very similar package to the council that he did last year, especially given what is likely to be a cut year. Will you support it? Councilor Novick, I'm going to have you answer this one.
Well, as you pointed out, last year he didn't really ask us for money for his program. He went out and got the money from the state, from Metro, et cetera. If he can't do that this year, then if he comes forward and says, I'm going to cut police, fire, and parks deeper than I otherwise would in order to fund my shelter beds, I'm not going to be too excited about that.
Actually, Councilor Koyama, I'm going to have you answer that one as well.
Sure. I'll say on a personal level, I connect with the mayor. I like him. I think in a lot of ways he has a good heart. I think most of council really deferred to him in the last budget cycle and tried to help him with his priorities. And honestly, I really did respect how well he did with fundraising. It did end up turning out, though, that there were some funds that he believed he secured that he didn't get all of them. Right? So we were counting on some of that. He had to come back to us and say, oh, actually, I'm gonna need to pull from different areas. I do believe this budget cycle, it's really time that we think about our commitments to our constituents. What I'm seeing from a lot of housing and homelessness, justice, advocates groups is that they are being left out of the conversation. And I have told the mayor this a lot on the dais and privately. Like, I think you need to be bringing these folks in, like the folks that run the different day shelters, like PDX Saints Love, Rahab Sisters, folks that he actually was pretty close to before he was mayor, and make sure that he's listening to those folks and that they are part of the conversation. Right now, that's not happening. He's been really like head down with his goal in mind, and I think that has been a mistake. I want us to keep inviting him to be like, hey, you can listen to these folks. I have been organizing them and have been meeting with them regularly just to hear what are you hearing in the shelters, what are you hearing, at my neighborhood association, Sunnyside Neighborhood Association has the Sunnyside Shower Project. So and I think it's great. And so those folks are left out of the conversation. The people that run street books, the people that run our streets that provide a lot of the food. So my hope is that more of those folks can be part of the conversation to make sure that we're talking about from living on the streets all the way to being in stable housing without wraparound services. We're thinking about that whole continuum. So I think there's definitely going to be some pushing. And if you've been watching any of our conversations about the 21, now 40 million, you can see that it's something that there's some friction around that on council.
Okay, I just have one more very, very quick question, and then we'll move to audience questions. What's a word that describes the three of you? An adjective. I knew I was going to ask this question, so I thought of three, but I whittled it down to one, which is cheeky. I think you are a cheeky bunch. But I'm curious how you would describe yourselves.
Short.
Okay, I will not lie. That was the first one I thought of. But I thought, I can't say that. But you said it first, so now I can.
Silly.
I think tenacious. I think we've all shown that we will be tenacious on certain issues at any given point.
The other one I thought of, which was not one word, but I think you all bristle at authority. And I mean that in a good way, by the way. That should not be an offensive thing.
An Oregon anarchist jurisdiction.
Okay, we are going to move to audience questions. I can't tell if that's a line formed on the left side. Maybe it is. But Dana has the blonde hair and the glasses, and she is going to hold the mic. Instructions for question askers. Please keep the question to 20 seconds or less, so no preambles. And it has to be a question, so it has to have a question mark at the end.
Hi, my name is Craig Mossback. I live here in the Richmond neighborhood. And maybe you're all short, bristle at authority like I do, but I would like you each to say something about the other two, because you bring a lot of diversity and similar outlook in some ways to this job. Like, what do you rely on your other two counselors for in terms of their perspective or their experience that they bring to the job that you might need help with?
That's a really wonderful question. I'm also going to have to amend a little bit because I want to get to a number of people. But I'm going to ask one of you to say a nice thing about the other two.
Easy.
Okay, Councilor Murillo is going to do it.
I think that Councilor Koyama Lane is known for being very sweet and very nice. But what people don't know about her is that when it is time to do a thing and to lock in, she is a strategic mastermind. Like, she will do the thing. She will negotiate. She's just very brilliant in ways that I think are unexpected when people describe her publicly. And as for Councilor Novick, I think that there is nobody else on council who can break a moment of tension, make us laugh and experience joy during difficult discussions. And that humor and laughter is just so necessary in the work that we do. So it is very easy to say lovely things about these two.
It's a really wonderful question. I do wish we had time for all of them to answer.
Yeah, hi. So one part of balancing a budget obviously is making cuts, but then there's also the raising revenues portion. So, one way to do that is that, taxes on individuals, as we've kind of alluded to. But, I work downtown every day, so I see a lot of empty real estate, empty commercial space. So I'm wondering what can be done or is being done to raise those revenues and like the commercial retail, not retail, but the, you get the picture.
Yeah, there are a few of us counselors, myself included, that are looking into what would a vacancy fee look like for vacant storefronts. And we're seeing that there are other cities that have done this. San Francisco has, Pendleton has done this. Councilors Canal and who's the other person who, we're getting a report back, and Dunphy, we're gonna get a report back soon about what that would look like. And we're wanting to make sure if we do it, it actually makes sense and is solving for the problem. What I have heard, I got to meet with some folks who are elected officials in Colorado who passed this in their city, and it has raised funds. It hasn't necessarily filled the storefronts. And so we just need to make sure we really think this through and do it well, but it's a great question, and a lot of people are wondering about that.
Thank you, counselors. Glad to see you all today. And so my question is in regards to how we know that affordability in Portland is becoming more and more difficult. And one thing that the Oregonian recently talked about that's also been done in Stockton, California, is a basic income program for low-income tenants. So I wanted to ask you guys what you guys each think about such a program, and what you guys think, how you guys think you guys could raise revenues. I've been saying through potentially auditing city government, since 20 million, for the first time, another 20 million, that's not normal.
I'm going to ask that just one of you take that question.
I love the idea of universal basic income. The city of Portland absolutely does not have the funding required to make that happen. I think that's something that we need to push our congressional leaders to do that. They have a lot of money at the federal level, and we need the federal government to actually step up in the places that they have the money to do those types of things. But I support it on a personal level, but I don't think the city of Portland has the funding to make that happen.
Council members, welcome. I have a couple questions. One of them that I'm kind of baffled by when I hear there's pockets of money in the millions of dollars being found or lost, whatever which way you want to look at it. I'm wondering if there's some effort afoot that is auditing, that is methodically auditing what's going on in this city. Because if not, we're glad to be your cheerleaders in any way you would like to use us, right? I think that's, and the other thing, I come from an old fundraising family, and being involved in the city sporadically in my 35 or 40 years, I'm a, what they call out of the box, on the dance floor, and let's get it done kind of lady. And I'd like to see a little more of that kind of spice, and I think you're the three commissioners that can bring that to fundraise in a way that we're not looking at fees on the people and taxes on the people, and more burden on the people. You want me to? I'm starting to dance, okay, sorry. Okay. But anyway, and so is there any effort to look at really creative ways to fund as a city, not so it's all on your shoulders? Thank you.
So I'm going to limit us to the first part of the question, which is what is the city doing any audit work as far as finding 40 million in the couch cushions?
Yeah, so today we passed the resolution for that me, Councilor Green, and Councilor Avalos, who's the head of the housing committee, to do oversight work on the missing dollars. So part of what that's going to include is an investigation, making sure that the city administrator is pulling together the different folks who were in charge of those dollars, and making sure that we get a full assessment of how those dollars went missing so that that doesn't happen again in the future. So that is underway, and they expected that they could get some of those records pulled within the next 2 weeks. I would say it's probably going to be between a month and 2 months for us to really sit down and sit with that.
Right on that theme, and I hate to pile on Portland Housing Bureau this evening, but they are giving the nonprofit property tax exemption to quite a long list of for-profits, and this is not an answer I expect any of you to have tonight. Just a loophole the state was unaware of. It'd be nice if you could perhaps take a look at it.
Okay, not quite a question, but they'll keep that in mind. Can't. Okay. It's a yes.
Hi. there's a lot going on in the world right now, as I'm sure you are all aware, and a lot of it's trickling down to Portland. So it's understandable that you guys are focused on a lot of short-term things and medium-term things. But one of the kind of the big long-term issues that I think is really the defining issue for our time is climate change. And voters passed a big pot of money to deal specifically with that, and yet I see it getting peeled off to be used to attend to these short-term issues. So what is it that you as city councilors can do to ensure that that money is spent in a way that's meaningful, not kind of like, well, we'll spend it on street sweepers because that might help some people bike and that's going to cut a gram of carbon. I mean, what can we do that is meaningful and spends that money in a way that respects what the voters wanted?
I love that question. I think that the past city council kind of grabbed a lot of money to fill holes in city budgets. I think that we need to be very mindful of how we spend the money most effectively to both reduce carbon emissions and help low-income people adjust to the realities of climate change. We're actually having a discussion right now about how to spend a certain pot of PSEF money. There's $15 million that was allocated for a program to finance EV purchases by Uber and Lyft drivers, and that hasn't really been utilized. So the PSEF proposed using that to increase the already very large program we have for building more energy efficient housing, which is, you know, a reasonable use. I tend to think we should be focusing more on transportation because transportation is 40% of our emissions and only 20% of the PSEF funding is going to transportation. So last week, Councilor Morillo and I had a discussion about various proposals as to how to spend that money. TriMet came forward and said this is a District 3 issue, that we could use $5.5 million to save the 19 bus along Gleason from being shut down, and we'd save that for 2 years. That's a nice use. There, people raise legitimate questions about whether we should be backfilling TriMet, and is there any prospect that won't go on forever? The PBOT said, well, also they're going to reduce streetcar service. Should we do something about that? Roger Geller at PBOT, the bike planner, has an innovative idea for how to revive bike, the bike mode share to what it was 10 years ago, which a number of advocates are for. So I would actually really welcome if everybody could go on and look at last week's agenda for the Climate Committee and look at all of the recommendations for how to spend money. And I think that the whole council is going to wind up taking a look at that and get your feedback. What ways of spending that money do you think sound most effective?
Can I answer quickly?
Sorry, I'll give you the next one. Okay, we have time for one more question.
Hey everyone, my name is Alex Wick. I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller. I'm a published nonviolent writer and environmental activist. I've studied nonviolent and civil resistance methods throughout the world, throughout history, and they're most successful when the civilians, the population of people, has some aspect of security services on their side. My question to you guys is, how are you going to get Portland police to protect citizens when they're being literally attacked by federal agents?
Councilor Morillo touched on that before, and as she said, the police are, the idea of taking on federal officials directly, personally, is scary, because do we want to wind up with our police in a firefight with the federal agents? We know they'd probably be prosecuted criminally for interfering with federal operations. But, and I've had this conversation with the chief, and he's thinking about, what the comprehensive answer. If ICE is beating an 80-year-old couple to death, at some point did the police step in? And I think that is something that needs to be articulated. The police need to be able to say, yes, there are circumstances we will physically defend Portlanders, so that the federal officers know that.
And Angelita and I will say this, and then having Novick, we've been in spaces where he backs that up, has been really important. Where sometimes an attorney's like, well, but we don't want to put police in that position. And Novick has said, but there has to be a certain point, right? Like, let's talk about when it has to they have to step in at a certain point. So his voice has been very important in that.
I have a really quick question about houselessness that I want to ask for houseless people. You talked about houseless. I'm sorry, we're done, but you can ask afterwards. How can you support suites?
We're going to do a lead right now.
So there's 15 minutes after. All the counselors will hang back for about the next 15 minutes, and I'm sure one of them will be happy to answer that.
And I want to say that this concludes our program tonight. I want to give special thanks to Ms. Koyama Lane, Ms. Morillo, and Mr. Novick for coming tonight, spending your time. These are busy folks, and it's special to have them show up here. But I also want to congratulate all of you. At a time when we're feeling like our democracy is being threatened, the antidote to that is showing up, is taking an interest, is participating. You're doing that, and it really makes a difference. More thanks to give. To our sponsors, The Standard, AARP Oregon, Fight Against Sex Trafficking, Hospital Association of Oregon, Tonkon Torp, the Don Sterling Fund of the Oregon Community Foundation. And I want to give one more plug for our program this coming Friday in 2 days on the Oregon health crisis with Dr. Bruce Goldberg and Governor Kissaber. And if you want to become a member or support us, you can see the folks out at the desk on the way out. Again, thank you all.
And a huge thanks to Sophie Peel, who is volunteering her time and is doing this in every district.